my first time on Twitch. I'm just giving it a go, streaming. The reason I want to do this is because I work as a mental health coach, and I work with employees from the biggest tech companies in Europe, and with employees from all over Europe. And I've seen some things. I see things, and I thought it might be helpful to talk about it and see, I guess so other people don't feel alone, and you're not the only person experiencing this. Because one of the biggest things I notice is that people don't talk to each other. Like, everybody's coming to me and saying these things, but nobody within the company is speaking to each other about it. So I think there's a lot of people feeling alone and feeling like they're the only ones feeling these things. So there's a lot of pressure that I'm seeing in the workplace. A lot of performance pressure, a lot of pressure to succeed. And people cope with this differently. And I've noticed that the people that have the hardest time coping with the pressure to perform are those who, usually due to their childhood experiences of having a very critical parent or having a lot of expectations on them, or something in their past experience that has led to them feeling this way. Those feelings for those clients are a lot more intense. So I find that people who grew up in a more secure background, who got a lot of validation and love and affection for just being who they are, can deal with the pressure at work a lot better than those who didn't have praise, love, validation given so easily, but had to be given with a lot of conditions. And what I've noticed as a theme, and it's something that I'm also studying to be a therapist, so this is something that my lecturer kind of speaks about, and it's this idea of an emotional decision that people make at a very young age that's so unconscious that we don't even realize our life is being driven by this emotional decision until symptoms are starting to occur. So the symptoms that are coming in, that they're coming in with to coaching are, I find it hard to separate work from life. I feel burned out. I'm stressed. I don't have time to do other things I want to do in my life. I'm totally worried all the time about work. I don't feel I'm performing well. I don't feel like my managers appreciate me. All of these, those are the symptoms. But what I'm noticing, I have two particular clients, and I'll talk about one of them without giving any personal details away, but I have a client who works crazy long hours, who finds it really hard to relax and do anything outside of work. He's very, very driven to succeed, but he often feels like he's not succeeding, so he's a lot of self-doubt and self-criticism. And as we kind of explored this a little bit more, what we found is that he comes from a childhood with a lot of chaos, where there was instability, there was financial instability, there was conflict, there was a lot of betrayal, mental health issues. A lot of this was going on, and there was somebody that said to him at that time, you need to be the man of the house, you need to take care of things. And as we kind of unpacked it, we discovered that his drive to work so hard is coming from a want to pay for his family's house, to pay all his family's debt, and feel like he is stepping into that role of being that man of the house and you know, providing. And it's so interesting, and he's so interested and surprised of how much his past is impacting his present. But I see this regularly. And it's often cultural too. Where backgrounds of poverty or struggle with money creates this drive and this ambition, and a lack of empathy, like self empathy, where these clients are developing this sort of inner critic that is pushing them to work harder, do more, be better. And then when they're not able to reach the massive standards that they have internally, they criticize themselves, they think there's something wrong with them, they feel a lot of shame, they beat themselves up, and then they try to push themselves to do more. But because they're feeling low and they're feeling ashamed, it's very, very draining, because it's very hard on the nervous system to be constantly against yourself, attacking yourself. And it's all happening so unconsciously that it's not even, they're not even noticing it. What they're noticing is that they're struggling and that people around them seem to be doing better, and they're comparing themselves to everybody else, and they're feeling that there's something wrong with them. Why are they not performing? Not realizing, first of all, the emotional decision behind their behavior, but secondly, the pressure that they're putting on themselves to live into that, even if it's completely unrealistic, completely like based on the logic of a 5-year-old. Those decisions are so primary, because when we have trauma, we create these protector parts that come in to try to manage and cope with that trauma, because there's no resolve in the moment. So those protector parts that come in to cope can start to take over. And then even though now we're an adult, now we're not at risk of being disapproved of maybe, or we're not at risk of being ousted from our family, or people, our family losing our house anymore, any of those things may not be in the present, they're still being embodied and held by these protector parts. And these protector parts take over, and then those are the ones that are driving the bus and making all the decisions, and suddenly you're burned out, suddenly you don't know why you're not able to relax. And I'm seeing this a lot. I'm seeing so much how our past, and this is not typical coaching, by the way, I'm also studying to be a therapist, so it's sort of a blend of the coaching and therapy together, but this high achievement, high performance pressure that gets put on, that comes from internally usually, and it is usually based on family of origin, past background, cultural background, and unless we see that and recognize that core, we tend to look for solutions in the wrong places. So we're thinking, I just need to try harder, I just need to do more, I just need to make sure that my boss doesn't see that I'm struggling, I need to make sure that like I'm copying what everybody else is doing, and just keep like working more so that I feel better and I achieve more. But until you get to like what's underneath that, and what are the thoughts, the emotions, the behaviors that are driving that need, you're kind of just looping around in a circle. So what I usually get these clients to do is to first become aware of it. What are they thinking in those moments? What are their emotions? How are they feeling in their body? What are they doing in response to those emotions? What's the action that comes from those? And where's the best place to intervene in that cycle? When we go into the fears of these types of clients, and by the way, I used to be this person, so it's not completely unknown to me. But there's often a massive fear of rejection, of failure. But what I've found is, when I really kind of explore into it and go into it, is they're actually afraid of their future self beating themselves up. So they're terrified of their own emotions, and there's a resistance to certain negative feelings, or feelings that are labeled as negative, and they do anything to prevent that shame. It's often shame is like the most painful emotion that we try to avoid. And all of these behaviors to try and run away from shame, instead of facing that shame, feeling that and working through that, and sort of rewriting the beliefs that enforce that shame. The shame comes from that self-rejection. There's something wrong with me. There's something broken about me. If people found out, they wouldn't like me. And until you expose that shame to the light and really look at it and like reason with it and work through it and offer it some compassion, you're constantly in a cycle of running away from it, which is where the perfectionism comes in, the people pleasing, the overworking. It's often to try to avoid that shame, or to give themselves a feeling of self-worth through actions, behaviors. But real self-worth comes with, it's an internal job, right? We know that it's looking at those parts of us that were shamed maybe, or were rejected, or were abandoned, or felt that they need to overperform to get those needs met, and really caretaking them as if they're our own inner children. And the more you integrate all those different parts of yourself, the more at ease you can feel in relation to the external stressors. And it's not to say that external stress isn't going to happen. It will. But there's external stress, and then the internal stress, how you relate to that. And it's usually the expectations that we place on ourselves that are often unrealistic, and how we are with ourselves when we don't meet those expectations, that causes the suffering. So yeah, I don't want to ramble on too much more, but it's those things I'm seeing in my clients, is the perfectionism, people pleasing, really high unrealistic standards, and then beating themselves up when they're not meeting those standards, and a lot of shame that they're running away from. And you can't outrun yourself. I think it's often that feeling, and that if the external, like your boss or your colleagues or someone in the outside world, would mirror back to you the shame that's already within you by firing you, disapproving of you, kind of having a conversation with you about how you're not meeting expectations, whatever it is that the fear is, that would reinforce that shame wound that's already there, that says, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I don't deserve to be here. And Shame can feel worse than physical pain. So we will do anything to avoid that. But the problem is the things that we do to avoid it only intensify it, because you're sending the message to yourself through your perfectionism, people pleasing, and all those things. You're sending that message that you need to perform to be accepted, that you're not enough as you are, that you have something to prove, that there's something wrong with you that you have to overcompensate for. So even though consciously you might feel like you're in control and you're doing something to fight these shame feelings, you're actually reinforcing them long term, because you're sending yourself that message that you are not enough, and if you left yourself alone and trusted your own process, trusted your own pace and way of working, that wouldn't be enough. So a lot of people say they want to feel more confident. They want to feel more confident at work. And I think to feel more confident, you have to start trusting yourself. Like, you don't feel confident in somebody that you don't trust. And it's the same with our relationship with ourselves. So if we want to feel confident, then we need to start trusting ourselves. And when you're performing or people pleasing or being a perfectionist or trying to control situations and how people perceive you and being inauthentic in a way, you're not trusting yourself. You're not trusting your authentic self to be enough. So how can you ever feel confident in yourself? Because you're not allowing yourself to be seen as you are. And ultimately, that's what we all want. Like, we all want to be loved and accepted and to belong. Like, that's what everybody wants. But we want to be... It's so painful to not belong and not be accepted as humans. Like, it's very primal. It reminds us of being outcasted in tribal times. It's so painful that we would settle for being accepted for a performance or accepted for a mask that we're showing than to risk showing our true self and being rejected for that. But you never actually arrive at the feeling that you're wanting of belonging, of acceptance, because and if you don't show yourself, then any belonging or acceptance that you get is reinforcing that belief that they only accept you because you're performing. I hope that makes sense. I'm kind of going on a tangent with that, but yeah, I think the point is, like, it's a risk. It's a risk to show yourself. It's a risk to have boundaries at work. It's a risk to be authentic. But it's the most rewarding risk when it does work out, when you do get acceptance. And the most painful thing is self-rejection. So rejecting yourself is way more painful than external rejection. And some people might not agree with that or believe that. But from my experience, what I've seen with clients is we're actually we're more afraid of our own inner judger, our inner critic, than we are of other people's criticisms. Because even if you say, yeah, I'm afraid other people are going to reject me or other people are going to be mean to me or whatever it is, why does that matter? Why does that hurt? It hurts because part of you believes that, and you would also turn against yourself in that way, and you would also be mean to yourself, and that self-rejection is very, very painful. Because if we have an internal relationship with ourselves of compassion and care and kindness, then other people's criticism don't hurt as much. Of course they hurt. It does hurt to be, criticized and rejected. That does hurt. We are, like, we all need other people and everything, but it doesn't hurt as much because you know you have a safe place to come back to within yourself, a part within you that's going to comfort you and say, like, yeah, that hurt, that's shit, but I got you, like, it's not true, I'm here and I love you and I care. Like, that kind of internal safety is there. But if you have an inner critic that says they're right, you know, you are bad, there's something wrong with you, that whole story, then other people on the outside reinforcing that is like something you will fight to avoid. And as I said, the things we do to avoid that perpetuate our own self-rejection, because they involve us abandoning our authentic self, usually through the pleasing, the performing, the perfectionism. If anyone has any questions, please put them in. I'm just kind of repeating myself now, and I need to hop off in a few minutes. But yeah, I think I'd like to share more about what I'm seeing in this field, because the same themes are coming up again and again, and I do think a lot of it comes back to that emotional decision that we make as children, and how that actually ends up guiding a lot of our lives, and how that leads to all types of protective patterns that we use to keep ourselves safe, that we use to protect ourselves from getting hurt by others. But the other thing I want to say about that is these protective strategies, it's protective parts of ourselves, often make us more unsafe for other people. They might make us feel safe in the moment, but they can make other people feel quite unsafe. So examples of those type of protector parts are like like defensiveness, guardedness, avoidance. Those things can actually hurt other people. And I think they're things that we do to keep ourselves safe, to keep our ego protected. We don't realize the harm and the hurt that it can cause to other people. And that's something I also see a lot. So people, this is why I encourage people to work on your mental health and to do some type of therapy or coaching as well, because it's not only for your own happiness and your own well-being, but the well-being of everybody, because the people that cause the most harm and hurt, and I see this with people's parents and how they treat their kids, and it's all like a lack of self-connection and a lack of connection to your own values and your own like not being able to access empathy for yourself. It makes it so hard to empathize with other people. So it all comes from you and within. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say for today. I'm gonna hop off now. I'm gonna see, is there happening in the chat? Okay. I'm going to hop off, but thank you everybody, and I'll see you again soon.